Yamuna-tira-vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivechakacharya Shtottara Shatashi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivechakacharya Shtottara Shatashi Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Mathura Dham ki Ganga Mai ki Yamuna Mai ki Tulasi Devi ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, can I get this book? I'd like to have the book on me. Okay. Okay, reading from text 18, chapter 10, canto number 2. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Mukhatas talu nirbhinam jihva tatropajayate tato nana raso Jagye Jihvaya Yo Digamyate Mukhatastal Nirbhinnam Jihva Tatropajayate Tato Nana Raso Jagye Jihvaya yo digamyate Mukhatastal nirbhinnam Jihva tatropajayate Tato nana raso yajne. Sorry, that's jagye. Yeah. Jihvaya yo digamyate Mukhatastal nirbhinnam Jihva tatropajayate Tato nana raso jagye Jihvaya yo digamyate. Please repeat.
Mukatastalu nirbhinam Jiva tatropajayate Tato nana sojashni Jivaya yodigamyate Mukatastalu nirbhinam Jiva tatropajayate Tato nana sojashni Jivaya yodigamyate Mukatastalu nirbhinam Jivata tropajayate Tato nana rasojamni Jivaya yodigamyate
Mataji?
Mukatastalu nirbhinam Jivata tropajayate Tato nana rasojamni Jivaya yodigamyate.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Mukatastalu nirbhinam Jivata tropajayate Tato nana rasojamni Jivaya yodigamyate.
Anyone else? Okay. I'm sorry, here, just getting some things up. 27. Okay. All right. So, mukataha, from the mouth. Talu, the palate. Nirbhinnam, being generated. Jihva, the tongue. Tatra, thereupon. Upajayate, becomes manifested. Tataha, thereupon. Nana rasaha, various tastes. Yajna, became manifest. Jivaya, by the tongue. Yah, which. Adhigamyate, become relished. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: from the mouth, the palate became manifested, and therefore the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence so that the tongue can relish them. The gradual process of evolution suggests that the explanation of controlling deities is Adidaiva, because Varuna is a controlling deity for all relishable juices. Therefore, the mouth becomes the resting place for the tongue, which tastes all the different juices of which the controlling deity is Varuna. This suggests, therefore, that Varuna was generated along with the development of tongue, the tongue and the palate being instrument and adhibhutam, or form of matter, but the functioning deity, who is the living entity, is Adidaiva, whereas the person undergoing the function is Adhyatma. Thus the three categories are explained as to their birth after the opening of the mouth of the Virata Purusha. The four principles mentioned here in this verse serve to explain the three main principles, namely the Adhyatma, Adidaiva, and Adibhutam, as explained before. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmitamena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Patakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savaditam Parijana Setam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shivjakhan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinam Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Bhishyavanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpataruvescha Kripa Sindhu Bhyavicha Patitanaham Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikas Swami Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaudavani Pracharni Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashyate Desani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalsphatikakritim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe Guru Vaishnav Bhagavan Tinera Smarana Hoy Vigna Vinashana Nayasi Hai Nija Vanchita Purana. So, here, now we're discussing a very important subject matter in the development of the tongue. I had a few verses lined up, but I think for some reason it's not showing up in here. So we'll see what we can do. What's happening here? Okay. Sorry. Okay, so here Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the three principal things that we've been discussing throughout these last couple of verses: Adi Atma, Adi Daiva, and Adi Bhutam. The three different types of, sometimes we refer to them as kleshas, as these three different sufferings, but in this case, in terms of creation, in terms of the interdependence they have upon each other, is being mentioned. Just as the point was being made before, what is the use of the eyes without, what is the use of the sun if there is no eyes, and what is the use of the eyes if there is no sun? Now we're kind of discussing this. How can that be? Like that if there is no eyes, that what is the use of the sun? But even if you don't have if you don't have eyes, the sun continues to exist. So how is it that the sun is interdependent on the eyes? How is that so? We discussed this a little bit in Prasadam. Do you remember? Why is it that the sun is dependent on the eyes? How can you say that? Well, if my eyes were taken away, it doesn't matter. The sun continues to stay. Huh? It wouldn't serve any purpose. The sun wouldn't serve any purpose. But the main point is that the sight itself, if, like you say, it wouldn't serve any purpose, but specifically that the sun god is there to facilitate that. And if the eyes don't exist, how do you define who the sun god is? Just like Ali Krishna was saying, or I think Koki Prabhu was saying, if there is no sun, what is the father? What is the definition of father if one does not have a son? What is the definition of a mother if one does not have a son or a daughter? So then, what is the definition of the sun if there is no eyes to observe that sun? So that the sun itself doesn't fulfill the full purpose. So similarly here, Varuna, she is the Varuna is Varuna male? Male, sorry, is a male. Varuna is the controlling deity of the relishable juices. And so it's mentioned here, from the mouth the palate becomes manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After all these different tastes came into existence, so the tongue can relish them. So Prabhupada mentions here that the gradual process of evolution suggests that the explanation of controlling deity Adideva, because Varuna is the controlling deity for all relishable juices. Therefore, the mouth becomes a resting place for the tongue, which tastes all the different juices of the controlling deity of Varuna. So the tongue being manifest here is also being described in different parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It overall describes as the process in which this comes about. This comes in the 3rd canto, 20th chapter, text 13. As impelled by the destiny of Jiva, the false ego, which is of 3 kinds, evolved from the Mahatattva, in which the elements of Rajas predominates. From the ego, in turn, evolved many groups of 5 principles. So this is important point in which, when I studied the Bhagavad Gita first, everything went over my head. But now things make a little more sense because they're categorized. So the primordial matter or prakriti, material nature, consists of 3 modes. generates 4 groups of 5. So the first group is called elementary and consists of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. The second group of 5 is called tanmatra, referring to subtle senses: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. The third group is the 5 senses, organs for acquiring knowledge: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The fourth group is 5 working senses: speech, hands, feet, anus, and genitals. Some say that there are 5 groups of 5. One group is the sense objects, one is 5 elements, one is 5 sense organs for acquiring knowledge, another is the senses for working, and the 5th group is the 5 deities who control these divisions. So, one particular deity being mentioned here is Varuna. So, this tongue falls into the group here. Of course, there is the first elementary, water comes about, and there is from that the form of taste comes about. And so from that taste there is the tongue, and from that tongue, which taste all for controlling deity is mentioned here, and from that taste the third group is that the tongue is there, and then so the tongue performs multiple tasks actually, and the speech is there from the tongue. So this is particularly being mentioned here are 2 categories: karmendriya and jnanendriya. I don't know if you've heard of this before. Have you heard of these 2 words? Karmendriya and jnanendriya. Knowledge acquiring senses and working senses. So there's 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and there's 5 working senses. The 5 knowledge acquiring senses are what? Knowledge acquiring senses. What are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses?
Eyes, ears, nose, taste.
Yes. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. What are the 5 working senses? Hands, feet, eyes. No, eyes are their sight. So speech, hands, feet, anus, and genitals. These are the 5 working senses. Now, amongst all of those, 1 is very special. Which one? It performs 2 functions at once. The tongue. The tongue performs 2 functions at once. What are those 2 functions?
The taste and speech and touch.
Yeah, so it's a knowledge acquiring sense, and is also a working sense. So of all the senses, the tongue is the most ferocious. We chant every day. So it has both of these aspects to it. It produces speech, and it also tastes. So whereas the other senses, they are generally just 2-1. They're knowledge acquiring. They just acquire knowledge, and they send signals to the mind to process it. But here, the tongue is able to, it has the ability to work as a working sense and a knowledge acquiring sense. And so we see so many times, this is such a great emphasis in the books of our Acaryas and Srila Prabhupada's books of the nature of the tongue and its purpose and how one should use that. But before going into that, I had a few more things. I don't know if I can bring it up again because I had done research and put it into my phone, but I think I must have put in the wrong thing. Or 3, 3rd canto. Huh? I'm just trying to find one particular thing, but I don't know exactly where that is. Okay. It was particularly to do with the creation of the tongue, development of the senses. But I don't think I'm going to find it. Anyways, another important point that is being made in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a lot of these topics that are being discussed a little bit out of the scope of knowledge that we have studied in school, and they're quite hard to understand. So, just as we've been taught in school by Darwin's theory that everything evolved from a simple cell into whatever, on and on, from some little speck of cells to a fish, to a land animal, to a monkey, from a monkey to a human being, and then from a human being now to an advanced human being who can think. It's very much different to that idea of that. This here considers the descriptions that are being given here. It takes into consideration much more than just evolution of a cell. This is specifically speaking about the evolution that comes about of all these subtle things and the gross things, and that things are actually manifested not as a progressive way of, like, the cell has to evolve into something else and then into something else. But these things simultaneously happen also, meaning that they come about in the form of a person. All of these things resides in the form of a person. It's not that one gradually comes up to become a person. Just like all of these things were there in Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma was created, and therefore all of these different senses and the knowledge acquiring senses and the karma indriyas and the jnana indriyas, they were all present. It's not that Brahma had to evolve from the sight, from the the ether to the, what comes after ether, in the sky, and then whatever the process that takes place in order for creation to happen. It's not that Brahma came about like that. No, Brahma came out of Lord Vishnu. He was born from a lotus flower as the four-headed form, and then similarly the human beings were born from him. So this here description is very different to the one that the scientists give, and the scientists, what they have is it is a concoction, it is a made-up thing, it's based on some small research. So we don't accept it. Even sometimes it seems logical, we don't accept it. Why? Because it is not conclusive, whereas the Shastra is conclusive, where Prabhupada writes in a purport. Here, it's another point where Varuna appears. The spear of the outer space constitutes his eye pits, and the eyeball is the sun as the power of seeing. His eyelids are both the day and night, and in the movements of his eyebrows, Brahma and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuna, and the juices are essence of everything. It is his tongue. So purport, to common sense, the description in this verse appears to be somewhat contradictory, because sometimes the sun has been described as the eyeball and sometimes as the outer space spear. But there is no room for common sense in the injunctions of Shastra. We must accept the descriptions of Shastra and concentrate more on the form of the Virata Rupa than on common sense. Common sense is always imperfect, whereas the description in Shastra is always perfect and complete. If there is any incongruity, it is due to our imperfection and not the Shastra. That is the method of approaching Vedic wisdom. So this is the method of approaching, that we do not accept these scientists, what they say. Like, whatever, there's so many things that's contradicting science in the Bhagavatam. So many things. Why? How do I know? I studied a lot of it in physics. A lot of this, a lot of the things that it's saying is completely, you could say, completely is out of line of the scientific way of thought. But there is no need to have any sort of crisis in this regard, because the scientists, if we are intelligent, we quickly come to a conclusion that such people, they cannot even control their own minds. They cannot control their own tongues. They cannot control their own senses, what to speak of. And they're so imperfect in their ways of conducting their research They cannot come with a perfect conclusion. And even if they did come up with a perfect conclusion, what use would it be in understanding who God is? What is His nature? Because it's all materialistic. They're trying to measure. So the nature of science is that it is imperfect by nature. So we cannot accept their knowledge. We accept that which is already perfect. We accept that which gives one perfection. There's no need to have doubt in this regard, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say. On the path of Bhagavad Dharma, one can run with a blindfold on in this path. One does not need to be able to see, actually. Once he gets on the path of Bhagavad Marg, and this path of transcendental platform of devotional service, then he can run with his eyes closed. He must be wary that he does not have a cheating guru, and he must be very cautious in this regard. But once he finds the spiritual master, once he finds the pure devotee, then there's no more doubt. Then everything is, there's no more doubt, there's no more hankering, there's no lamenting, that's it. Brahma bhuta prasanatma na sochiti na kankshati. There's no lamenting and hankering. We've seen some devotees are very good examples of that. Just not mental, just whatever. Is the Krishna consciousness, this is what it is, and go on in life, have a blast doing it. We can see those devotees who've come to the platform of devotional service, and they accept the Shastra as it is. You can see their lives, how blissful their lives are. They live a very blissful life. Or you could say, okay, the scientists contradict everything, and they say, well, we know everything, and look at how miserable their lives are. What is the use? Okay, you know so much. What is the use of your knowledge? What is the use of your knowledge? Look at your life. What is the use? No better than an animal. As Dujamani Prabhu was saying. It was just like we're unnecessarily trying to know things that we don't need to know. What is the use of it? What is the use of knowing that the atom moves about, in the atom there's a proton and a neutron, and there's so many different, quarks and all of these things, and examine all of those things and find all of these things. What is the use of it? What is the use of it? Okay, they may try to manipulate the material energy to some extent, but what is it? Where is it actually getting one? Not very far. But to understand the descriptions of the Bhagavatam, to understand this principle, Adi Daiva, Adi Atma, Adi Bhautika, it allows one to actually start to come up in his consciousness, bring himself up, understand these different things, understand these natures of how these things work, as being made, the point being made again and again here, that without Varuna, without water, there's no question of taste. It's like when your mouth goes dry, you cannot speak and you cannot taste. It's very hard. The Bhagavatam is not illogical, it is logical. It is giving us all the knowledge, and it's not completely understandable, like Srila Prabhupada is saying here. Common sense is always imperfect. How do all of these things come about? We don't know. The whole creation of material existence, we have no idea. A Big Bang, and then everything forms. This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous idea. It's a very far out idea. It's a very highly put a lot of faith in. You have to put a lot of faith in this understanding. But the Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives knowledge of the astronomy side of things too, but it is inconceivable how such things are coming along. So we accept on that basis that they're inconceivable, and the Srimad Bhagavatam is the absolute truth. Why? Because we've seen it transform our lives. We've seen it transform our lives. The tree is judged by its fruit. Okay, there's no way, even within science, when you study as a PhD, you won't understand everything that you study. You just won't. You won't understand certain phenomenal. How do I say that? Phenomenal. I can't say that. Phenomenon. You just won't be able to understand it. Some scientists, there's so many scientists that do study for their whole lifetime, And certain things you just couldn't understand your whole life. You try to study it, understand how this works, how this interaction works. Just like Schrodinger is this, well, that's his equation. Who's the guy that did the, huh? Well, there's that's anyways, that's another thing. But like who did the split particle experiment where the particle is a wave and it's a wave and a particle at the same time? Nobody remembers this? I studied it in quantum, but I forget who did this experiment. Anyways, it took a long time for them to come up with this particle wave duality, because sometimes a particle acts like a wave, and sometimes it acts like a particle. So it was very difficult to understand whether it was a wave or a particle. But they figured out that it was simultaneously a wave and a particle. Chinta Veda Veda Tattva. So that took some time because it was like inconceivable. How is this happening? How do we explain this? And so it took a little bit of time for them to actually explain that or understand that. So even within science to this day, there's so many things that are inconceivable, but they accept it. Why? On some basis of authority. On basis of false authority and false claims, of course. So similarly, within the Bhagavatam, there's things that are inconceivable, that to us we're not able to understand, but we accept it in the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that they are given by His representatives. And so, specifically being spoken here is of the tongue. And so as we were speaking of the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, and the sense of the speech that goes on. And so this is a very important point, and is made again and again throughout our literature, beginning with those who have read. I think everyone here has read Ishopanishad, right? Not sorry, Ishopanishad, well, maybe Ishopanishad too, but Nectar of Instruction. Everybody read Nectar of Instruction? Mataji's? Yes? Okay, so as the first verse goes, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam. Jihva Vegam Udara Pashta Vegam Etan Vegan Yo Vishahet Dhiraha Sarvam Apimam Prithivim Sashirshyat. And this specifically makes the point that a sober person who can control the urge to speak, the mind's demands, and the actions of anger and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So one must learn to control his tongue. One must learn to not let the tongue control him, but learn to control the tongue itself. Because the tongue itself becomes the binding knot of material existence, actually. Just like we make the point in Srimad, within our literatures, that the tongue, of all the senses, there's two generally mentioned, ear and the tongue, but specifically main point, Athashri Krishna Namadi, na bhavet grahaya indriyaihi sevanmukhihi jivado swayam eva spuritya adaha. Therefore, material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, quality, and pastimes. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of Lord's food, the tongue is purified and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. So, although initially, Atashri Krishna Namadi, na bhavet grahya indriyahi, that the material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, quality, and pastimes. But then, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then it says here that, but by using his tongue to chant the holy name. How does that make sense? Material senses, and we just read how this is a material sense. The tongue is a karmendriya and a jnanendriya, acquires knowledge and tastes. So, how is it, or vibrates, how is it that the same material sense, which the statement itself says, one cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name? Huh? The holy name is purifying, sure. But so then why does he mention this principle? So I'll come back to that. But here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj makes a very important point. So just like, why did I read that? Because making the main point that it has the ability to give one liberation. We'll get to that a little bit more. But this tongue, just like it has the ability to bring about a taste for the holy name and liberation, it's been binding the living entity within the material world for eternity, practically, as we often hear, as we've talked about just now, that one is a nitya baddha. We're eternally bound within this world. We've become eternally bound. So how can a person who's most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart being always filled with the pitches, give up their association? Specifically, a wife is always very kind and sympathetic and always pleases her husband in solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear, and the affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in the household life, there are many decorated items of household furniture. And there are also animals and servants. Who could give such comforts? The attached household is like a silkworm which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by the material conditions. How can one escape? So, Prabhupada writes, in the householder affairs, the first attraction is the beautiful and pleasing wife, who increases household attraction more and more. In another place, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that the beautiful wife is one's enemy. One enjoys his wife with two prominent sense organs, namely the tongue and the genitals. The wife speaks very sweetly. This is certainly an attraction. Then she prepares very palatable foods to satisfy the tongue, and when the tongue is satisfied, one gains strength in the other sense organs, especially the genitals. Thus the wife gives pleasure in sexual intercourse. Household life means sex life. Yan maitinadi grihamedi sukham hitucham. This is encouraged by the tongue. Then there are children. A baby gives pleasure by speaking sweet words in broken language. And when the sons and daughters are grown up and one becomes involved in their education and marriage. And then there is one's own father and mother to be taken care of, and one also becomes concerned with the social atmosphere, with the pleasing his brothers and sisters. A man becomes increasingly entangled in household affairs, so much so that leaving them becomes almost impossible. Thus the household becomes graham andakupam, a dark well into which the man falls. For such a man to get out is extremely difficult unless he is helped by a strong person, the spiritual master, who helps the fallen person with a strong rope of spiritual instructions. A fallen person should take advantage of this rope, and then the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, will take him out of dark well. So, being mentioned here, genitals and the tongue, vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam. So, the nectar of devotion this first instruction that it gives is more or less, one could say, well, it is from this instructions we're approaching all the way to the last instruction in which Radha Kund is mentioned, and one should engage in the service in Radha Kund, bathe in the Radha Kund, and that's the important instructions initially. Well, Rupa Goswami is giving is just the beginning. But actually, Rupa Goswami is giving this beginning is the beginning and the end here. The ability to control one's senses. This to be ability to control this jihva vegam udarapashta vegam etan vegam yo vishahit dhiraha. Rupa Goswami mentions that this is in a line. Well, it's mentioned here. It's mentioned in a line that the tongue, belly, and genitals. If one cannot control the tongue, does not control the belly, then if one cannot control the belly, then the genitals are agitated. And as a result, as Prahlad Maharaj is describing, simply for the satisfaction of the two important senses, the genitals and the tongue, one is bound by material conditions. What are those material conditions? This home, wife, children, such and such. One becomes attached. Why? For the satisfaction of the tongue and the genitals. That is the strength. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung like that. Sarirara vidya jal, jodindre hitaye kal, that it is the, it's like the network of ignorance. These senses are like snakes. And out of all of them, the tongue is the most ferocious. One must learn to control his tongue. It's very ferocious. It always wants to vibrate nonsense. And it always wants to taste food that is very palatable, very tasteful. One must learn to control these two things, the tongue and the genital. Well, by controlling the tongue, the genitals are automatically controlled. So it is very important in our lives that we learn to control. And Krishna consciousness teaches us that. Outside of that, the tongue controls us. The materialists think that they're in control, but as soon as you see a very nice looking pizza, there's no question of you not taking it. As soon as you see some sort of, whatever we were talking about yesterday, what is this? Bojangles? That's, you're saying Bojangles. What's the other ones? Church's chicken. That one is chicken and watermelon. This is not a joke. In Louisiana, there is a store called Chicken and Watermelon. You can look it up. I'm not making a joke here. It was serious. But there's so many places, or like Kauki Prabhu was telling us that he met some guy, he picked up some guy while he was driving, and he asked, why is there a chicken store at every other corner in Atlanta? This guy was from California. They are controlled by the tongue, so that every other corner that you see some sort of object to the senses, then you're immediately attracted towards it. You have to go eat it. You cannot control your senses. Not ignoring the fact that same food which is pleasurable for your tongue is causing you so many diseases. We were talking about yesterday about food in general and how amazing that Krishna Prasadam is. We get fresh, home-cooked meals, devotees who cook it with love. We're talking and we're speaking about McDonald's. And you guys is it Hungry Jack's? Do you have that here? That's not a thing. That's an Australian thing. Okay. So, in Australia we call it Macca's too. We don't call it McDonald's. So McDonald's, if you buy a burger from McDonald's, there's I wish I pulled up the video for this, but I probably could. Let me do this here so that we can get some, we can have get the senses working. What is the video called?
Guylee's Burger in his basement for like 20 years.
Basement burger in basement.
It might be on Daily Dose of Internet.
Okay. Okay, here we go. I'm going to play this video here. So he puts it in these jars. This is.
See what happens. That's from a cheeseburger and the Big Mac.
Look at that. That's doing fine. It's like 2 weeks later, no problem. Same fries.
Some kind of frugal nature. That's right. Look at this. Watch.
Oh my God. Look at those fries. Still the same. Still the same. Oh my God.
Is right there, tapping it.
Fries, still the same.
And quarter pound. What is wrong with that?
Still the same.
Not even one little.
There's more videos online, and you'll see that actually some of them don't even decompose. Like the burgers, some of them don't even decompose. So such people, even knowing that foods such as this, they cause so much pain to the body, and actually it causes so many diseases to the body. The tongue itself, they cannot control the tongue and are dragged towards eating this nasty food. So people are controlled by their tongue, and because they eat all sorts of nasty things, they cannot control their senses, they cannot control their belly, they cannot control their genitals. And when one cannot control one's genitals, specifically, then he binds himself, because lust, that's the nature of lust, that it consumes one completely. So the material civilization, it particularly, you'll see that the attraction of food is very great. You know, you have instant pizzas and whatever, you can get food at a click of a button in my phone. And so people are controlled by this tongue, and when they speak, also the other function of the tongue, they simply speak nonsense. They simply speak about so many other things. What about sex life, about money, cars, whatever it may be, so many different materialistic things. And as Prabhupada describes in the purports of the Nectar of Instruction, such speaking is like that of a croaking frog, in which it invites a snake and becomes devoured by the snake. So this is the situation of the materialist in regards to the tongue, that it is the sense that controls more or less our lives, actually, because it has the ability to bind us up, or also has the ability to give us liberation. And so coming back to this verse, this question is actually, this material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of the food, the tongue is purified, and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. So, how to explain this? How to understand this? Well, in the Nectar of Instruction, that classic verse is there, that one is afflicted by avidya, and that by constant chanting of the holy name one comes to knowledge. But actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj also asks this to Shukadeva Goswami. How can some material sound, the sound vibration, which is seemingly material, give us liberation? How can something that is within this world give us something outside of this world? Shukadeva Goswami answers this question by saying, well, the holy name is not of this world. The holy name is beyond it, it has descended. Golokera Prema Dhan Harinama Sankirtan. It is descending, it is not an ascending process. One does not acquire it by knowledge, one does not acquire it by one's own endeavor, but actually the holy name descends upon the tongue of the living entity. How? Why does it descend? Causeless mercy. Simply by one's endeavor to try to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that one is able to render service by using his tongue. And that is primarily done, as Prabhupada comments in that verse I was quoting from Prahlad Maharaj. He specifically makes the point that one should surrender unto the spiritual master. What does that mean? The first thing we learn when we come in devotions amongst the devotees is what? What do we learn? What do we get taught first, more or less?
You're not the body.
No, before that. No, we learn how to chant Hare Krishna. We learn that's one of the most important things that you do when you come in. You chant Hare Krishna. It's not like you walk in and it's like, here's the 4 regulative principles, follow them. It's like, no, here's some beads. This is how you chant. So one should surrender to the spiritual master, because the spiritual master, he redirects one's life in centering it around chanting the holy name of the Lord. He transforms that which is the material senses into spiritual senses. He does that. That is his purpose. That is his service. He does that. The spiritual master. He takes the disciple who is conditioned, and he grants him the holy name in which he can chant and purify his tongue. And not just by chanting, but also by tasting the remnants that are being offered to the Lord. Therefore, we do not take karmic grains because it is contaminating. So the tongue has to become purified. One has to, by such purification, one understands who Krishna really is. So the holy name descends upon the tongue of the conditioned soul when he chants with sincerity. When he is not envious of the principles, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur makes that point. He says that the holy name descends upon the tongue when one is not envious of the sadhus, and he's not envious of the pure principles, the principles of pure devotional service. Those are the qualifications in order to purify the tongue, to purify our existence. Because by purifying the tongue, we purify everything else. By chanting the holy names of Krishna and by tasting the food that is offered to Krishna, we purify our whole life. We purify our whole life. And chanting is Shravan Kirtan. Chanting requires hearing. So we hear properly and we chant properly. And if we do such a thing, it is guaranteed and promised that we will not become bound up. You'll often notice in the history of the Krishna consciousness movement, those who are not hearing and chanting properly, their devotional service in the long term does not do well. Those who are not hearing from the spiritual master and those who are not chanting, means those who are not chanting their rounds properly in the morning, those who are not being consciously speaking about Krishna, those who are not reciting the hymns of the Vedas, who are not constantly thinking about the prayers that are going on or reciting the prayers that are going on, chanting Hare Krishna, speaking with devotees about the aspects of devotional service or pure devotional service, we have seen that they naturally struggle and they fall away eventually. As there's this, I don't know, not devotees, not that you have to watch it, but there was this video that I saw of this New Zealand Mataji who describes her process of actually leaving Krishna consciousness. And what was the thing that, where did it all go downhill? Huh? No. Huh? Yeah. She took something from her mother. Weakness of heart. Bodily conception of life. What else could I say? But she took something from her mother. Yeah, it's like, okay, it's my mother, it's okay. She describes that. She's my mother, I'm just going to be once, it should be fine, it'll be fine. But then it was once, and then it was twice, and then 3 times, and then so many doubts appeared in the mind about devotional service. Why? Because the food that is cooked by the materialist, it makes one's mind like stool, one's intelligence like stool. It does not allow one to see through. Why? Because it puts one in ignorance. It's the vishayis of the sense enjoyers. It puts one in the consciousness of a sense enjoyer. Naturally, then you become averse to Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna consciousness is of a complete opposite nature of that of a vishayi. It's of a servant to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the vishayis are extremely against the idea of a servant. I want to be the enjoyer. Ishwaraham aham bhogi balavan, what is it? Ishwaraham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. That I want to be the enjoyer. That is the consciousness that is going into the food that you're eating when you eat karmic grains. And therefore you're wondering why you're struggling with your senses and why you're struggling with your mind. You're eating karmic grains, easy, finished.
Did she come back?
Huh?
Did she come back? Did that Mataji come back?
No, she didn't come back to Krishna consciousness. At least not that she's some feminist I think, I don't know how to say, how do you say like a night, like, what is a dike, but in like proper formal terms? I don't know, see, I just know the word dike, so she became a dike. Because she lost it, she lost the whole, she was like, if you look at those, actually, it's quite amazing. In New Zealand, they train the women up in a nice way. They're like chaste, they cover their heads, they have like families that come out of that, and there's a nice system. Like I've seen, this is Deva Amrita Maharaj's program in New Zealand. At least that aspect of things, of those whatever women and getting married and having all of that, they have a really nice system that works. But she fell out and just kind of like jumped right back into her material situation. But you saw a gradual process of just losing it because of not following the principles of pure devotional service, neglecting it. And so that means that if we are taking food that is cooked by materialists, we start to cultivate material desire within our heart. Therefore, we don't have pure devotional service. Therefore, we have envy, greed, lust within our hearts. And then just because we chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds a day, and we may go here and there to the temple, we think we've come to the platform of devotional service, and then we wonder why there's so many problems in the temple. Practically every center, more or less, in our Krishna consciousness movement, not every center, or at least within the West, a lot of centers that I've been to, karmic grains is like, there's so many different devotees who have been around for some time describe. It's like a casual thing. It's not what's the problem? What's the issue? It's just bread. It's a lot of bread. In the temple that I'm from, this Christian lady used to come drop off bread, and they would just leave it up the front for everyone to take. Is that ridiculous? And devotees were taking that. Devotees would take out brahmacharis to the movies. Yeah, welcome to the world of Krishna Conscious Society. Not the Sonic, I don't know what they watched. I didn't ask about that one. I've seen brahmachari have a Pizza Hut box under his bed. They had a bed, his bunk bed. Or, whatever, chips from McDonald's. Shocked. And then, and that's just whatever, a brahmachari, but then the leaders are doing that also. The leaders are eating karmic grains openly, and then we're wondering, why is there so many problems? The temples, why are they not functioning so well? Why is there so much quarrel within the temple? Because Kali Yuga has entered. Prabhupada only said that our movement will only be destroyed from the inside. Why? Because it's pure. It's pure. There's no question of it. Because when you practice those principles, you see what comes out. That's specifically why, at least in my case, I moved from the other side of the world to be with the devotees that I'm with now, because I saw, this is what it is. This is what it means to be amongst devotees who are following the principles. There is no envy and greed and lust and quarrel and hypocrisy and all of these things. It's like as it is, as Prabhupada wanted it. Is as it is. Why? Because it's following the principles as they are. So there's this Krishna consciousness movement. It is perfect. It is perfect because Srila Prabhupada is given it. He's perfect, and he himself is reciting all the great acharyas who are perfect. So by taking upon this austerity of, you could say austerity, but yesterday we had cinnamon rolls. I thought this was like a daily thing that Americans had in their life, but then devotees tell me, well, this is not what people generally have. I didn't know that. I thought it was like people just ate cakes and cinnamon rolls and all these things. So I was like, okay, this is a normal thing. But devotees were like, bro, this is amazing, bro. This is great. This is crazy. I thought it was like a normal thing that you guys had in life. But it's not that because we're controlling the tongue doesn't mean we're holding it and not eating any food and just drinking dry stuff. It's just like this Caden yesterday. I don't know if he's listening. Sometimes he listens in. He messaged me saying, is this squash that I'm enjoying? It's like Kalki Prabhu made that squash and I took it and I was like, what is this? Sometimes you eat prasadam, like I tell the devotees, sometimes you honor prasadam, and while you're honoring it, I can't wait to take it again a little bit later. I'm like meditating already upon like, well, I can't wait till dinner, I can't wait to take this again. It's like so good sometimes, it's like, oh my God. And then I asked him, hey, how's everything else? He's like, just took my first bite and holy cow, yes. It's like, and so it's like we're controlling our tongue, but that control is done within devotional service. And that is allowed to a great extent. Why? Because we're not envious of, or like we're not lusting over food. Just like when we cook, we're not sitting there cooking going, oh, I'm going to taste this, it's going to be so good. More or less, I never really cooked before I came to Krishna consciousness. Kalki Prabhu knows. He trained me up, actually. He taught me to make my first pot of khichdi when we were in Ram's house. But I never knew how to cook. But when you cook, I was surprised that like when you're cooking, you're not considering like, oh, I'm going to like have such a good time taking this prasadam or taking this food down later. Because I'm cooking it, it's going to be so good, I'm going to cook this. At least in my life, I noticed that was removed. Or even just like when we go on Sankirtan, we collect a lot of money. That nature, oh, this is my money, or this is me, that was removed. Why? Because we understood, oh, this is for the enjoyment for Krishna. This is meant to be enjoyed by Krishna. So the lust is removed. The lust is taken out. The nature to the tongue also still wants to taste, of course, as we relish prasadam, but like Prabhupada says, the poison is gone. The senses are still like the snakes, but there's no more poison. There's no poison anymore. So the lust is taken out. The lust, the greed, all of this is taken out when one directs everything towards Krishna. So similarly, when we talk about Krishna and we make Krishna the center of our life in terms of our speech, then also that lust and that nature to acquire more in this world, that is also taken away. So then naturally when one's lust is taken away at the start of it all, or beginning of it all, with the tongue, then naturally the genitals are not agitated. Naturally the belly is not agitated. So one should learn to control his tongue. At least in the beginning years of devotional service, we take down as much prasadam as you can. Because why? It says right here, by tasting the remnants of the Lord's food, one purifies oneself. But Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Instruction, later on one should also control that to some extent. One should take so that his health remains nice. One should not do more. If one is taking prasadam and is taking on the basis of, and it's affecting his health really badly, then that is, again, it's more of a lusty mentality. So one should take prasadam and relish prasadam, there's no doubt about it, but he should do it in accordance with what he can handle in. But in the beginning, when we were young, we can handle practically anything. So take it down, take whatever, whenever, and, be served out, take as much as you want. But later, as we progress in devotional service, we have to begin to control the tongue. Just like we see with Raghunath Das Goswami, how he did it. He would eat, my God, his renunciation cannot be imitated or should not be imitated at all, but he would eat where the cows, right? Where the cows would eat, and the uncooked rice. That was the rejected rice. And Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with his renunciation that he came and said, what are you hiding from me, oh Raghunath? What are you hiding from me? Please let me take that. Let me see what you have. And we take it from Raghunath Das Goswami and take that. And Lord Chaitanya was extremely pleased by this renunciation. So that has to be there as the years go on. And as that renunciation comes along, the attraction towards chanting the Lord's names, it should be proportional, that one is more attracted to hearing and chanting and reading and glorifying the Lord and purifying his existence like this. So it's a transcendental process, and it's not particularly, cannot put it into logic and sense as Prabhupada comments in that one place. It's not possible. Common sense is so limited. We're always imperfect. Yeah. So the Shastra is always perfect and complete. So we should put faith in the Shastra. We should have complete faith. Shraddhavan jana hai bhakti adhikar. One who has faith, one who has deep faith. Bhakti is his rightful claim. He has the adhikar, he has the claim to bhakti. So we should carry out the process of devotional service and see it transform our lives. It's very transcendental, it's very ecstatic. There is no shortage of anything within devotional service. We do not have to look for anything else when we are surrendered to the spiritual master. We do not have to think about our material situations. Just like I'm seeing other devotees have that experience, and I'm having that experience in my own life. Just everything is provided, everything you want in life is provided, everything is given. There's no shortage of anything as long as we're not envious of the principles of pure devotional service. And we maintain the principles of pure devotional service, and we become, we try to maintain that not just within ourselves, but within the society of devotees. So this tongue should be controlled. This tongue, the tendency to talk and the tendency to taste. And for the brahmacharis, this is most important. If one wants to remain brahmachari his whole life, this is like the two principles one should live by. And anybody should live by, but especially the renunciates. They have to live by this principle of always hearing and chanting the Lord's names and discussing about the pastimes of the Lord and devotional service, and only eating Krishna prasadam. And within only taking Krishna prasadam, being self-controlled. To not take too much and not take too little. So it is a very important principle for one who wants to remain a renunciate his whole life. If he can do this thing, he can control his tongue, he'll be good. That's it. Back home, back to God, no problem. That's all that's required. So if one can simply do that, then he can remain brahmachari his whole life. He can go on serving strongly, serving with a lot of enthusiasm, because you see the string of verses. If one can control the senses, and then Rupa Goswami speaks about the different things that are favorable within devotional service: enthusiasm, patience, confidence. All these things will come about by control of the senses. One becomes a Goswami. One becomes a guru. One has the qualification. If one can control the tongue and the senses, the mind, and the urges of anger, the belly, genitals, he has the capacity to become the guru, become a spiritual master, or become the Goswami. So that naturally means one will be naturally enthusiastic, one will have patience, one will have all of these things by following these simple principles. And so Srila Prabhupada has given us this really amazing process to control the tongue. So we should take it up very enthusiastically engage in chanting the glories of the Lord. Sarira vidya jal jodindra etaikal jive file vishay sagare taramadya jivati lobamai sudarmati takijita katina sangsare. Krishna boradoymai, Krishna is very merciful. Karibare jiva joy swaprasadana dilobai seyanamritapa. He has given us this nectarian prasadam, which we can relish to our greatest extent. Seyanamritapa Radha Krishna Gunaga. Let us take this amazing prasadam, chanting the names of Shri Radha and Krishna. Radha Krishna Gunaga, Premidako Chaitanya Nitai, and beg for the mercy from Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu, that they will give us this prem, give us this love of Godhead. So we can engage in taking transcendental prasadam and always describing the pastimes and the glories of the Lord. And so this is the purpose of the tongue, and there's no other purpose of the tongue. Everything else, all the other purposes are simply binding one But the real purpose and the development of the tongue is for the purpose of glorifying the Lord, which is unlimited. Even Ananta Sesh, he cannot finish describing, although he has so many thousands of tongues. So as Rupa Goswami says, Rupa Goswami, that when I chant the holy name of the Lord, I desire thousands of tongues, so that I may go on and on and on and on. And I desire thousands of years. So we should develop this greed. We should develop this greed. That is actually the most important part of devotional service. We develop greed. The laulyam, the greed to perform more, to chant more, to hear more attentively. So by doing some of these basic things, one can actually achieve perfection. So I'll end my class there. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. We have 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes, Kalgi Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I had a couple of things, but I'm gonna like boil it down to like one or two. So just two quick things, and I have one question. So one thing is that maybe I should ask my question first. Well, okay, yeah. Anyway, so the basic thing with like science, as we were talking about in the beginning, is they miss like the simple point. Like Prabhupada would always explain that like very simply. So like 1 + 1 = 2, but they've taken like 1 + 1 = 3, and so everything above and beyond that point is just like it's just a mistake. Another thing too is what science is like. If they say something that's in line with like Shastra or Krishna conscious, then like we can accept that. And Prabhupada would like do that to some extent.
Yeah.
But I had a question. So how do we understand things sometimes, like, for instance, like, anyways, I'm not looking, but for instance, like, if you go on like some scientific like journal, like they'll have like these huge essays explaining something that may be contrary to Srimad Bhagavatam, and then they have all these pictures and videos and things, and it seems like pretty convincing. And they say, well, we looked at our telescope. I was looking at some stuff last night, and they were showing all these pictures. I don't understand it, but like all these different colors and stuff, and they're saying like this is that such and such thing, or like this is the Milky Way galaxy, and then this solar system spinning, and then we can tell by this and that. So it's like they have like all of this like, you could say like proof and things,
Yeah.
and we can't like necessarily like disprove it by like putting some counter video or whatever. But
Yeah.
so like how do we like understand that thing, all that?
Yeah, it's just like the same thing with the whole moon thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have all of these pictures and all of the Prabhupada said, no, they didn't go. So we may not be able to push it the other way, but we accept the statements of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the level of faith that's required within this science of Krishna consciousness. They may present so many things, but if it's not according to the statements of the Bhagavatam, we may not accept. And this is how it is. That requires a level of faith. And even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where was I reading that? He was saying that, maybe Mahotsa was reading that out, I think that morning, saying that, or that evening class he gave, that not everything may be there within the Srimad Bhagavatam, with all the descriptions of astronomy, astrology.
Yeah.
And it's although it is important, it is not the basis of like our spiritual life exactly. Like it is important, but it's not that it is like the core of everything. So it's like even if I accept the scientists, I reject the Bhagavatam, okay, what are you going to do with your life now? What is your life going to look like? You be an atheist, whatever. Okay, fine, be an atheist. But what does your life look like? It's depressing as hell. Where do you get to sit with purified men and take prasadam? Where do you get to sit with purified men and hear transcendental literature? The fruits are seen by the fruits are seen. It's like their idea of their principles that they have. It doesn't bring about change in such a purification of heart in the society. But the science of devotional service does. So even if they were true, still we don't accept. Because we have a higher process, we have a higher lifestyle, we are connected with Krishna. They cannot understand that ultimately. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Is anything else?
Just another quick one follow up to that. Is there a problem with like, okay, so science is there, Srimad Bhagavatam's there, so then I accept like the spiritual aspects of Srimad
Yeah, that's a
Bhagavatam,
problem.
and then I accept like the material things that science offers?
Yeah, it's just, then you're rejecting Bhagavatam. You're rejecting it, because if you accept something else, I accept this aspect of science, but that means you have to reject Bhagavatam. And Bhagavatam is Krishna, and Krishna is given that authority, then it becomes offensive. Or to give some other interpretation of Shastra, to try to interpret it in some way and twist it, that's offensive also. So we have to take the whole thing. Take the whole thing or leave it, that's all. It's up to you, you're an individual, you have free choice. You can go live out in the world of scientists where everyone's envious and greedy and lusty, and accept astronomy. Oh my, there's a supernova and there's a big bang and there's all this. What the hell does it make, what difference does it make to your life? How does it make any difference? How does it make any difference at all? Nothing. It is, it's just all in your mind. But Krishna consciousness makes a difference to our life. So whatever. I had that actually for a little bit. This is when I was in my second year, and then I was hearing some statements from Srila Prabhupada. I was like, whoa, hang on a sec, how do I understand all of these things? I came to the conclusion, what the hell, It's like, I'm in Krishna consciousness. I was like, 18, like Jacob, and I was traveling with the brahmacharis in a van for a little bit. I was like, why am I being mental about this? It's just like Krishna consciousness definitely works because I see it in my life. Hey man, just go on in life and become purified and be happy, that's all. I don't want to be miserable like these rest of these damn people. Who cares? It's like and I accepted that I can't understand everything. That's one thing, I just accepted I cannot understand everything. It doesn't matter. Yes, my senses are misleading and I cannot understand everything, and there's so many descriptions. I just accept them, and that's all. The basis of the thing. And believe me, life is much simpler like that. Just like in Bhakti Jacob, we often this homie's not mental. It's just life is good. Jacob, can you do this? Yep, no problem. This is when we don't have doubt, when we have faith and we see the transformation also comes about much quicker. Just don't be mental. Just as in Ramaroy Prabhu would tell us in New York, don't think, just do. Just do it and you'll see. You just do it and you'll see what happens. I used to think a lot. So you just have to perform the process of devotional service. Anything else? Yes, Mataji. Yeah, you want to give her the mic?
You mentioned that once one finds a bona fide spiritual master, that there's no more doubt or limitations and hankering. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes, without realization, those doubts are still there. So why is that?
Yeah, so there may be small doubts, there may be little bumps within devotion service, but overall, if one is taking initiation, he should be convinced that this is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So along the way, there may be little bumps here and there. But even among those, it's not that we're thinking, okay, I'm going to leave devotional service. Is that, okay, how do I overcome this difficulty and how do I understand this particular thing? But it's not hampering our devotional service per se. That should be seen in a disciple's life overall. That we're sometimes disturbing situations are there and they're disturbing to our mind. But amongst those disturbing situations, we don't think, I'm going to stop chanting my rounds and following the 4 regulative principles and doing all of these things. So generally, disciple means that we've given up our material aspirations, and we're going to perform those vows that we've made for the rest of our lives. So that stream and that principle is maintained as the basis of everything, and then there may be whatever here and there, a little bit of difficulty here and there. So as long as one keeps that as the center of everything, that his vows that he's made and his dedication to his spiritual master. Other than, outside of that, we have, their doubts come about for sure, but they don't, when I mean doubt in this regard, particularly means that which like takes off of us the platform of devotion service. That shouldn't be there. That should have been already taken out. So if we're taking initiation means full surrender. We have so many ideas of initiation within our society. Initiation means full surrender. One surrenders to the spiritual master. That's it. Done. Finished. So then one has to be really convinced what he's doing is right. What he's doing is completely, like, okay, I'm going to be able to do this. Sometimes we're not. Like myself, did I think, like I had complete faith in my spiritual master. And there's some part, like, but Krishna willing, that I will chant 16 rounds and follow this principle for the rest of my life. But it's not always like full certainty, but it's like 80% at least. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So as long as that principle is maintained within our lives. Other doubts may be there and things, difficulties, but those are just a part of Krishna consciousness that come about. But overall, as long as you maintain that principle of surrender to Guru, and whatever situation I'm in, try to do what is pleasing to my spiritual master. That as your principle. Whatever other things are there, they're of small significance. Other doubts and whatever they're there. As long as you keep that the principle of your life, pleasure to my spiritual master, everything else is not really significant. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.